back to KLEAN Radio
the Sober Lifestyle Show, presented by KLEAN Treatment Center
on AM 830.
Welcome back to KLEAN Radio. It's Andrew with my co-host Judah, and we're welcoming Tony Dennison into our studios tonight from The Closer on TNT.
Now, a lot of you have been listening to Tony, and he's this extremely mild, sweet man, and but he was voted by Time magazine in the 1980s, him and Larry Hagman, as, what is it, the worst villain of the 1980s? Or the best villain?
Most memorable villain
of the 1980s.
Yeah.
How many kills did you have on Crime Story? What was it?
Oh, well, the first year, the show only ran 2 years, but the first year of the show, my character was responsible either directly or indirectly for the deaths of 56 people.
My goodness.
And he's a famous character named Ray Luca, and that was actually your big break. And
That was my big break, yeah.
And one of my favorite stories that you always tell me about is that night that you had that where everybody went to, where you went to, you were about to give up, and you decided to go to that one last acting class.
Oh, yeah, well, it wasn't that it was going to my last acting class. My career, basically, my life, too, to some degree, falls into the category always of, you never know. You just never know.
Right.
Don't give up. It's not over till it's over. Just keep doing the thing that's in front of you, and don't worry about the results. But I had this acting class, and that I was studying with this woman, Julie Bavasso. You would know her. She played the mother of John Travolta in Saturday Night Fever.
That's great.
And she was great. But she's gone now. But anyway, Julie, the class was wonderful, and I was really getting a lot out of the class. And this is after the cocaine and stuff, and now I'm like trying to get my career back together, because before that I had just done a lot of theater. I had no film credits at all. And so I remember it was an improv class. And I was really exhausted. I was working that day on a soap opera, doing one day on a soap, and I was really, really tired. And the thought was, let me just go home, back to Brooklyn. It's only improv. I don't need to go. And then I went, nope. I screwed up for so many years, running a gambling place and cocaine and all that. And I said, no, I got to go to class, even if it's improv. And I went to class that night, and Julie tells me, she said, why didn't you go see Bonnie Timmerman last week? And I said, what are you talking about? And she goes, I told you that Bonnie Timmerman is looking for Italian types for a new television series, And I said, you didn't tell me. She goes, yes, I did. She was very, Julie was like a tempest in a teapot. And I was like, okay, you did. I mean, my hand to God, the woman never told me. You don't forget something like that.
So who is Bonnie Timmerman?
Bonnie Timmerman's the casting director for Crime Story and Miami Vice and, a lot of movies. She does a lot. She casts a lot of movies for Bruckheimer and Simpson and for Michael Mann, obviously. So I went in, and I went in. And so the next day I went in to see Bonnie Timmerman, and Bonnie didn't know who I was because, again, I had no film credits, and we had this wonderful hour-long casting session, and then she sends my tape out to California. The next day, I don't hear anything all day. Then the next night, I get a phone call from Bonnie saying, Michael Mann really liked your tape, and we're flying you out to L.A., tomorrow. And I'm like, are you? And I'm thinking,
you thought it was like a guest star.
I thought it was a guest star because the guy was so, villainous. Right. I said, he can't be like a lead on the show. He's got to be. And I'm thinking, wow, how strict they are out in L.A. Now you have to go in and read for the network just to play, a guest star.
Bit part.
And then on the way out there, flying out there, my first time in L.A., I read the script, and I went, oh my God, he's the lead.
Wow.
The cop and the gangster, the two leads. And I get out there, I meet Michael Mann, who I was a big fan of him, not just from Miami Vice, but from a movie called Thief.
Correct.
And so I meet Michael, and Michael, unbeknownst to me, had already made up his mind, really. I mean, he really wanted me, and he was just hoping that everything would work out. And I didn't disappoint. And I got the job. And then a day later, I'm in Chicago rehearsing for the show. I mean, all this happened in my life, completely turned around.
And you look at Tom Sizemore, who Michael Mann made another offer to for a television series, and Tom just couldn't keep it together.
Yeah. It's a shame.
Really a shame.
It's not anything you can do. And so, my career Bonnie took a big gamble. I mean, by sending my tape out because she had no footage.
Right.
I mean, I did a good job in the room with her, clearly, but but she thought, this might be the guy. And Michael said, yeah. And next thing you know, my life turns around.
Well, Tony, we have a call for you on line 1. Why don't we take that?
Okay.
And let's see. This is Mark.
Yes, hi, Tony. How are you?
I'm great, Mark. How are you?
I'm doing fine, thank you. I was very impressed with your portrayal of Ray Luca in Crime Story. I have both seasons on DVD. You did a fantastic job. I don't know what it's like working with John Santucci, if I pronounced that name correctly.
Hold on, Mark. Can you repeat that?
Yeah, I don't know what it's like working with John Santucci, who played your henchman.
Right.
But you had a lot of colorful characters on that story. My main question is, at the end of season 2, you guys were in a plane, and I think it was diving into the ocean or something.
Right. And
had the series continued into season 3, would you have any idea how you guys got out of that?
Oh yeah. Well, it was great working with John Santucci. Sadly, John passed away a few years back.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yes, leukemia.
Oh.
And anyway. He was great to work with. We had a lot of fun. But the plane, the idea was the plane was was going to sort of, you'd see it like sort of the last minute, like what's the name of that Captain Scully, the guy who saved all those people in New York.
Oh yes, yes.
Sully. The plane was going to do one of these belly landings, and you'd find, Torello and the cops. And the rest of his squad on some, tramp. They're getting picked up by some tramp steamer, and Santucci, Paulie and Luca are already on and Goldman, Andrew Dice Clay,
right,
were already on the tramp steamer. And then the thing was that we were supposed to wind up in China, in Southeast Asia, because at the time period, it was like 1963 or 1963-ish. And it was, Michael wanted to do this story involving the Golden Triangle with with all the drug dealing, drug smuggling to the United States. And for a while, for one season, Luca and Torello were going to wind up working together, battling these forces to get out of there. And it was an interesting idea. And, sadly, the show didn't have a third season, but that's what Michael wanted to do. So it would have been rather fun, I think, having, Dennis Farina and myself, being on the same side, even if it was only like for a half a season.
That's great. We have one more call I'd like to go to really quickly. Someone has an issue with whether addiction is genetic or not. Let's listen to our next caller.
Go ahead.
Hey, Andrew.
Hi.
Hey, how you doing?
Good. Who is this?
Mark.
Hi, Mark. How are you doing?
Hey, good.
A lot of Marks.
Your caller a little while ago, your host a little while ago, guest, excuse me, said, I guess I was just genetically predispositioned to be an addict or an alcoholic. And, after, almost 2 decades of being sober, I've totally flip-flopped on it. I used to think it was a combination of genetics and environment. I don't at all. I think it's all environment. I don't.
Interesting. What made you come to that conclusion?
Well, first of all, I have a child now. And I got a 2.5-year-old little girl, and she has a mommy and a daddy. She has a mommy and a daddy that are totally engaged in her life.
Correct.
So I remember back when I was a child, I didn't start drinking and drugging until very late in life. So I have vivid memories of my childhood, high school, college, no drugs, no alcohol, no nothing. Had a good family. But then after I got out of college, I realized that something had been a little amiss in my family, and it had made me kind of afraid of life. And there was no hugging and kissing in my family. No, I love yous. No, hey, are you afraid of anything in life? No, nothing. My dad kind of let me raise myself.
And can I just jump in here? I think it's interesting because, to some degree it doesn't matter. Whether we really figure out if there's a genetic predisposition or whether it's environmental, people still get into this pattern of addictive behavior and end up with really severe problems in their lives. So on one level, once people are addicted, there's a problem. You can debate whether it's their fault personally or whether it's genetic and they had a predisposition, but they're still an addict, and at that point, they need some sort of help.
Well, I said before that I may have been genetically predisposed. I'm not like yourself, Mark. I don't get into the controversy as to whether or not it's an allergy, whether I was born this way. All I know is the absence of chemicals and alcohol in my body and in my mind give me a greater opportunity to maneuver through my life more sensibly and more responsibly. But like if people want to say it's a disease, then okay, fine, it's a disease. If you say you were born this way, fine, then you're born this way. That part of it doesn't matter. I know environment, you're right, has a lot to do with it. I always read those stories in the big book, and they always mention, I came from, some of them, I came from a family and everybody was really sweet and nice. And then later on, as you read the story, there's a part where, the father was like some really stern disciplinarian, or the mother, was absent a lot of the time. So who knows? But again, all I know is not drinking and not using is made my life better.
The reason, though, that I said something is because I kind of get tired of, especially since I came out to California, I'm a Texan, in meetings and stuff, I hear so much of this, people are blaming genetics for things that they could change. And it's not my fault, is the way they're saying. Well, I don't think that being an alcoholic's my fault, but I'm not going to go on Zoloft, or I know you probably don't want to get into a big discussion about antidepressants and all this stuff, or whether you're bipolar.
Well, we guess you're not on them, right? That's
I just think so much of it is, hey, they're blaming, they're saying, hey, I'm this way because of just that's the way I was born. And
I don't blame it. I don't blame it on anybody or anything. Like I said, to me, it's real simple. When I stopped using drugs, my life got a little bit better, and when I stopped using alcohol, my life got a lot better.
Hi, Mark. It's Judah.
Right on.
Mark, it's Judah.
Right on.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
What does it matter?
Are you asking me?
Yeah, no, yeah. I'm asking you,
the only reason I say it matters is because I see kind of a push in the world lately where nobody's concentrating on what's really causing people to be alcoholic, and that's the family.
Well, I'm not going to disagree with you. I could walk into almost every elementary school in America and tell you which kid will probably be, and it's usually the kid that's staring out the window, drawing like doodles on his loose leaf.
Judah, if I could just jump in for a second. I've been working in the addiction field, either psychiatric or addiction field, for 15 years, and I would say for everyone that I've seen that's had an addiction problem, they're different. Everyone is different. There's no two patients or clients that I've ever seen that have been the same. Everybody has a different story. And there's different levels of acuity or levels of illness, and sometimes there's mixtures of illness. I remember growing up and being young and having a friend that I saw drink one beer, and you could just see his eyes change immediately.
Was that me?
And
me too, me.
Right, and it might have been Jude as well. And he was just off to the races from there. I mean, his life went, he was drinking all the time. And, what is that? Why is someone predisposed to having a drink and then they're just off to the races? And then there's other people who I've met that will drink casually for years. And then all of a sudden they hit 40, 45, and they find themselves taking benzodiazepines in the morning, benzodiazepines to go to bed. They're drinking all day long, and they're snorting coke to stay awake.
And it's also a hard word because you're talking about predisposition. So is a predisposition a genetic thing? You're predisposed.
Right.
And so then you get into nature versus nurture.
I guess it wouldn't have to mean you're genetically disposed, but you might have been
predisposed
raised in a way that sets you on that path.
Right. Or one of my favorite analogies for me is have you ever seen X-Men? It's this school full of mutants, right? And which I compare a lot to alcoholism and addiction or alcoholics. It's like we have, some of them have the most amazing skills, the most beautiful gifts that haven't been honed correctly. You know, it's like, and you could look at the schools in America. There's no shop. I mean, it's either you're good at one thing or you're not, and you're done. You know, if you fail right away, you're done. You know, and would at 5, you know, somebody said, "Hey, Judah, you know, we're going to hone your skills." I don't know. Maybe something could have been changed then, and it's great what you're doing with your daughter, you know, because you have that knowledge. But
yeah, I like to hear any success story. I think the fact that for you the issue seems to be environmental and you've made it work, and family's important. I think family's important for most people. Most people I see that have developed a problem with alcohol or drugs are extremely lonely. You develop this sense of isolation and you lose touch with your family and friends, and you end up in a room.
Yeah, you give your kid the greatest environment you can. You know, that she or he, in your case, your daughter, I mean, she's got a really good head start. I mean, you know, the possibility of her being loved so unconditionally, you know, the absence of fear and longing and loathing in her life, you never know.
And it's more than that, too, because you have the knowledge now. If God forbid there were ever to be any sort of problem, you're on top of it. You know, you have the knowledge of years of experience to say, hey, something's a little amiss here.
Hey guys, it was great talking to you. I've been enjoying listening to you. I'll talk to you later, all right?
I really appreciate your call, Mark.
Have a great night.
Yeah.
Just a quick shout out there to everybody that's wrapping up their Super Bowl party. Let's try and avoid drinking and driving. Call a cab. Don't get in the car. We've all been there. Know how that can be. We'd welcome other calls. You're welcome to call us at 877-830-830. That's 877-830-830. We're going to take a quick break now, and we'll be back again with Tony Dennison.
It's Klean Radio on AM 830.
Welcome back, everybody, to Klean Radio. This is our first show on addiction and recovery on AM 830. Really happy to have everybody listening. You can call in and speak to us here in the studio at 877-830-830. We'd welcome your calls. Our main guest.
What song is this? Who picked this song?
I don't know. It wasn't me.
Rand.
It was Rand. It was Rand's fault.
Born Identity, right?
What?
Born Identity?
I can't hear a word you're saying since you're in a soundproof studio in the next room. This is Rand, by the way.
And he's in recovery as well.
Moby.
From Moby, who's in recovery as well. Well, there we go. There you go,
If
Judah.
nobody has ever met Rand, you haven't met.
That's right. Rand is the man behind the window.
Yes, he's got the slick back hair. Everybody thinks he's a cop when he wears a suit, and then he's an undercover cop when he's not wearing a suit. He actually has a mullet in the back of his head.
That's not fair.
No, he's going to kill me. I like you, Rand. You're a good guy. And you do great work for Angels Radio.
It's great with the cop look. It keeps the drugs out of the studio.
No, it's okay. We'll save that for later. Rand.
Oh my goodness! Wow.
You know, I was talking to Tony about this before we came into the studio, and I got to talk about it. You know, I don't. You know, obviously there's a certain actress again in the news today for stealing. You know, a $2,500 necklace.
Right.
You know, from a store, and you know, we know a lot of people that have no problem being anonymous. You know, people have the ability to be anonymous within the anonymity.
Absolutely.
You know, and I'm so tired of hearing people say, and this is just me, you know, I might have some people disagree with me. You know, if this person wanted, and obviously we're talking about Lindsay Lohan, if she wanted anonymity, just go away. Go to Big Bear. You know? I mean, you know, get a house in Big Bear for 6 months and get help. You know, it's like enough with the excuses, you know, and I think excuses kill people.
Well, this is sort of you know, like our last caller was saying, maybe it's just environmental and not genetic, and, you know, maybe there's some sort of environment that she could be in that would make it better. Is it genetic? Is she even an addict? Is there a psychiatric problem underlying it? Nobody really knows. You know, you look at the amount of help she's had and the number of interventions she's had from both criminal justice system as well as, I'm sure, private individuals, and nothing seems to quite be resolving what are continual behavioral problems.
Well, she's got 2 flat tires for parents. So, right. I mean, you know, that's a problem. I mean, those people need to be in recovery, some kind of like treatment center just for their parenting. And, you know, I mean, the family is completely dysfunctional. Is it the parents' fault? No. But, I mean, right now it seems like both the mother and father are playing it very low key. Which is a good thing. So I commend them for that. And this kid now, she's not a kid. I mean, she's over 21. She's over 18, and
Over 21 too.
Yeah, over 21. So it's like
She's legal.
It's like at a certain point, it's like, okay, it's your responsibility.
Right.
And who knows how much you want it. I mean, I was like completely wrecked out, on the coke and drinking, and I decided no, drinking is okay.
Right.
So I was like, half measure. Okay, I'll
Right.
do that. And eventually, it was like, I hope it doesn't take her that long. She's a very talented actress. But you said before about the excuses. I think excuses are for children, explanations are for adults.
I always say, I obviously I run a treatment center and work a lot with addicts, and at the end of the day, it comes down to you have to decide not to drink and not to use drugs. There is no cure for this.
But she's she's so. I mean, she's addicted, and right. and she's one of us, and it's hard. I mean, I know firsthand that it's hard. The reason why the program is so successful is because it's the empathy that exists, like one alcoholic talking to another alcoholic. When somebody says something, when I'm talking to another alcoholic about some, crisis or chaos or some situation in my life that's like extremely challenging, they understand, and in their understanding, you get this nod. And that that they're nodding because they totally get it, whereas somebody who's not an alcoholic or have any alcoholic tendencies, just looks at it like, gee, you just seem weak,
right?
And it's not the case. I mean, it's not about weakness.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. You look at addiction, and there is a physical tolerance that builds no matter what the substance, pretty much. And then there's also a psychological component. There was a study that we were just reading about earlier that was done on mice where they've come up with a vaccine that actually stops mice from being addicted to cocaine physically. And it bonds to the molecules, and they give them this vaccine, and they don't respond to cocaine anymore.
They became addicted to sex, though. That was the only
Well,
problem.
what happens, though, is that's great for mice. So even if we come up with a vaccine for cocaine, that doesn't mean you're going to remove the desire to still get high somehow.
Because you want the escape.
You want the escape. And
Right.
we're much more complex than mice, thank goodness.
It's like even from the beginning of time, man beat his head against the wall to escape.
Or spun in a circle.
Or spun in a circle. It's always been some form of escape.
Right.
Even as children, what did we do? I mean, we did. I mean,
dancing. Perfect example of escapist behavior that you start with, Then,
healthy.
Then you're taking ecstasy.
Healthy.
Right? So it's a progressive disease. Once you begin to become addicted.
It's like the pickle. What's that analogy with the pickle and the, once you become a pickle, you can't become a cucumber?
Right. There's no going back.
Well, speaking about Lindsay Lohan, I don't know the girl.
Mm-hmm.
I think I saw her one time at a meeting, but, it's interesting. Every time I see an article about her in the paper, I say a little prayer for her. I really do. I mean, because, like I said, it's like I don't want her to suffer. I don't want her to, be eulogized one day. I mean, I'd rather see people talk about what a great job she did in a movie that she was able to I mean, look at some of the people who've made their recovery, had embarrassment on a public level,
mm-hmm.
and then found a way back into it and are performing and doing wonderful work. And it's like I hope that's the case. And I think that as that whole family works out their dynamic, maybe they'll all walk away from this thing, better people because of it.
Once again, we're KLEAN Radio. We'd welcome calls in the studio. The number is 877-830-830. We're here talking about addiction and recovery. We actually have another call we'd like to take now. It's Rob. Rob, are you there?
Rob. Earth to Rob.
Rob is not there.
I think we lost Rob. Okay, Rob.
Oh, there's Rob.
There's Rob. Rob, we're getting feedback.
That is not a great connection, Rob.
Yeah, we're going to cut that off. Getting some bad feedback.
Rob,
on
you
that
can
one.
call back. Trust me, there's not a long
And by
queue.
the way, women, and Kelly, this is just a platonic date, but we are still auctioning off a date with Tony Dennison. and he prefers women. But if it's a guy that wins the contest,
oh my God,
then that'll be the case.
Only Judah can get away with this.
I will of course chaperone Tony, so you have nothing to worry about.
Oh, thanks.
So let's win a date with Tony Dennison, who used to be known as Anthony John Dennison, just so everybody, if you're a little confused.
In case you got me confused with the other Anthony.
With the other Anthony John Dennison, yeah.
With the Anthony John Dennison, I'm one and the same.
Well, that's good to know. We now know that we have the real Tony. With the real Tony Dennison, please stand up.
So,
I'm standing, people.
Yeah, right, it's radio.
Yeah, it's radio. Yeah,
so there's got to be some sort of trivia question that we could come up with to win a date with you.
Okay.
And it's got to be answerable, Tony.
Oh, all right. Well, I mean, let me think about it. If you'd given me, some advance notice, I would have come up with a really good.
The promos were running for a week that we would win a date with you.
Oh, I didn't know that. Oh, I see. Okay.
And
it might be a simple question,
right?
Well, you guys go on and talk about
is the Earth round?
Right. No, I do know. There's a question I just give me a second to think about it. But there is one I think I could ask. That's a real tough answer.
Okay. And again, you could call in and at any time, and the number is
877-830-830.
It's a little confusing.
You just got to get it's that 830 thing.
Yeah,
877-830-830.
That's a very interesting number.
That's a good number.
We could do trivia from TV.
Okay.
Like,
but it's got to be current day, because I know you're going to go to the 50s or the 40s.
I was going to go, well, what do you want? I mean, I want to make it hard.
It's got to, hopefully we have a listenership that's, obviously we don't mind.
Well, maybe you guys know. It's the name of, the TV series that was on. It was called Topper.
No, never heard of it.
Oh, okay. Anyway.
It's, Tony still watches Gone with the Wind on a nightly basis. And
no, I watch old classics a lot. I mean, I never tire. I mean, on one TV in my house, I have, some old movies, and I'll watch Lawrence of Arabia or Patton or The Godfather.
It's very exciting radio, Tony.
Yeah, okay.
Anyway, with the NFL, one of the things that I was reading about earlier today was that there's a lot of alcohol sponsorship in sports. What do you guys think about that? Do you think that's a good idea? You think we should put some controls? We have bans on smoking, advertisement now, alcohol.
I don't believe. Me personally, I don't believe there should be any. And I think Tony would agree. It's people are going to do what they're going to do.
Mm-hmm.
It's. I was just in Canada recently, and hello to I know a few people are listening in Canada. And I do mean a few, and they're my friends. And I was there, and I was in Vancouver, and Vancouver is just stunning. And as we were driving through the streets, my friends go to me as we were driving through. They go, that's a heroin clinic. And I was like, well, what's a heroin clinic? And they were like, and literally it's a stunning street. And they were talking about that, nurses give, make sure that you don't OD, and they give you heroin. Nurses will stand over you in case you, and then you could whatever, do what you got to do.
Right.
And I thought it was very disturbing. You're on, at least in America.
Well, that's called harm reduction. That's the harm reduction model, where people say people are going to use drugs anyway. Let's try and limit exposure to HIV, clean needles, as opposed to an abstinence-based program.
But what's the risk?
Well, it's about
how does it end is what I'm asking.
Society's saying there's these people that are going to be addicts. They're going to cause these problems anyway. They're going to use it on the street. Let's at least get them in a place where we can try and minimize the damage they're doing to themselves and others.
Well, I look at it this way. I think that, I know I may be in the minority on this, but I just think that alcohol and drugs and any kind of drug should be legal. Because if somebody wants to go out and, and shoot heroin needles into their head, that's their prerogative. They want to do that, let them do it.
Is that possible?
At least they're not going to beat my mother, well, my mom is gone, but beat some relative or friend of mine up on the street to get money to go get high. And with the lessening of the budget in terms of law enforcement having to worry about all of that stuff, then there'd be a lot more money for treatment centers, and the more drugs they do, the quicker they'll get into those rooms. That's the way I look at it. I know that it might be a simplistic, approach, but I know that every time the American government declares war on something like poverty, education, drugs, it's an unwinnable war.
Right.
It's a
good way to get elected.
Yeah. Well, they just drag some people out and tote them in front of you. Oh, I'm going to make these people better.
There's also no answer. It's
There's
like,
no
what is
answer.
somebody going to say? No, I'm against the war on poverty.
So, I mean, if people want to get high, let them get high. I mean, it wasn't, I think drugs were only illegal in this country in 1936 with the
Marijuana tax stamp act. Yeah.
So, I mean, before that, it's like, I'd read some statistic, and, you might be more knowledgeable about this in terms of the accuracy, but before Prohibition, there were somewhere in the neighborhood of like 9 million alcoholics or something like that, or 9% of the population were alcoholics, and that after Prohibition, and when it was legal again, it'd gone up to like 10%. So, I mean, it wasn't like, there was like now 15, 20% people like, oh my God, I can drink booze. I'm going to become a drunk. So it's like,
that's interesting, because I was reading a book on the temperance movement and Prohibition, and it actually said that during Prohibition, the rates of alcoholism did actually drop dramatically. But of course, we had other side effects.
But how do you know, though? Because in those days, right, it was illegal. So how many people would actually admit to doing something?
It was actually based on admissions to hospitals. So it was long-term, hardcore, heavy drinkers. So, and it showed that it actually did have a positive effect on the amount of problems. I mean, there's a lot of secondary fallout from just even casual drinking. There's 90 million people in America. That's about a third of the population of America that every year have some sort of incidents related to alcohol, either domestic dispute, drunk driving, something like that. So there's involvement with drugs and alcohol that may not be indicative of full-blown addiction. So you can limit some of those consequences. So a public health response would be, let's limit alcohol or get rid of alcohol, and then you'll have less problems. Obviously, we live in America. Hopefully people can have some liberties and freedoms still, something we'd like to see.
Yeah, I mean, I just think it would be, I don't know, at the end of the day, I think it's worth a real, I think it's worth a shot. I mean, they can always make it illegal again. I mean,
Right.
But going back to your question, it's like if, it's, it's America. You could advertise, it's great, I don't believe Budweiser announcing a game, sponsoring an NFL game is causing, alcoholism. It's it's a free market, and
well, one thing's for certain, and all the times when I used to get high when I was younger, I don't think I ever once thought about the fact that it was against the law.
Right.
Maybe that was a factor in not making me be a dealer.
Just makes it harder to achieve.
But I mean, the thing is, it's like when I got high or when I drank, even before I was 18, it didn't matter.
We're going out on a break here for a second. We have a few calls lining up. We'll be taking some more calls when we come back. I'd also encourage people to call in, 877-830-830. Tony Dennison will be joining us briefly after we return. We also have some surprising comic guests who are also sober and talking about their experience with addiction.
funny.
Welcome to Clean Radio on AM 830.
The Sober Lifestyle Show presented by Clean Treatment Center, a dynamic and professional sober living facility.
Clean Radio features celebrity and professional interviews covering a wide range of topics. If you or someone you know is in need of assistance in dealing with addictive disorders, call now 877-8830-830 or go to cleanradio.com. Now your hosts for Clean Radio, Andrew and Judah.
Welcome back, everybody, to Clean Radio. Glad to have everyone listening on our first inaugural show. Top of the hour here, we've got some additional guests, but first I'd like to go to a call. We got Veronica on line one.
Hi there.
Hi, Veronica. It's Andrew.
Hey.
How are you?
Good. I'm actually calling in regards to the other side of the addict.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how to pose the question because everything's always a long story, but, I was with my husband, 10 years now, 8 years before we got married. And, we had our regular life, which, is drinking and some occasional pot smoking. And but after we got married and, money was missing and things were weird, I kind of ended up discovering he was taking a lot of Vicodin and I think on the Oxycodone, what was it, Oxycontin?
Oxycodone, yeah.
Yeah, so it came out, and it separated us for a little bit, and he never took formal rehab, never went into formal rehab.
Mm-hmm.
But cleaned up, and we're back together. I love him dearly. My question is, how do I regain that trust back? And being that it kind of always worried me that he didn't go into rehab on, like, the painkiller addiction. And I went to a Nar-Anon meeting only one time. We never did any counseling after that. You know, I'm always kind of in the back of my mind worried about it, and I'm worried if he gets hurt, are they going to prescribe him Vicodin, or how do we, like, deal with it from here, and how do I rebuild that trust?
I completely can relate to what you're talking about. Trust and with family members, and that, have someone in the family's addicted or multiple people are addicted is often one of the hardest things to rebuild. And especially with addiction, because addiction is marked by relapse. So it's an illness where people often relapse. And part of getting through addiction is learning how to recognize when relapses occur and then try to minimize the impact of a relapse. So the first thing to do, I would recommend, without making too much of a judgment, is for people to go out and educate themselves as much as possible about relapse prevention, and what to do and how to recognize when someone you're with might be using again, and then the resources that are available to help you with that.
Al-Anon is an amazing, amazing, amazing program. And for people out there not familiar with Al-Anon, it's for the family group. It's for the family. And,
I mean, addiction is definitely a family illness. I think the caller earlier mentioned as well that, he thinks that the environment has more to do with genetics, and that the family is his family is what keeps him sober. And I think that's true for some people. And certainly being not isolated and having good primary relationships, like a spouse, like yourself, is important. And that trust will come with time. And I think the important thing is, if someone does relapse, that they're able to tell you about it without a lot of the anger that comes up. A lot of times people, their spouse may relapse and they get angry because they're like, oh, all that pain comes up again. You relive the whole situation of the person being addicted, and it's just like they go back to stage one, instead of recognizing that relapse and slipping can just happen, and you can get back quicker from full-blown addiction.
So can I ask another question in regards to, I mean, I still like to drink, and, we have a lot of family parties, and there's always alcohol and some other things that family's involved in. Nothing more than, I would say, marijuana, but he's in that environment. Sometimes that does worry me a little bit, but I mean, so from what you just said, is that like contributing to that back towards him maybe on a path to relapse? Or, and then I'm thinking, like, I barely even, as well as I knew him, knew the signs of what was going on, and not really knowing how long it was going on till it came out. And it actually had to be somebody that said, open your eyes, or, something's wrong with
Right.
drugs and all this, to being able to see it.
Right. Well,
And-
triggering events are tough, and what you're describing are triggering events. When somebody's seeing something that is similar to a prior behavior that led them to use, watching people use drugs, seeing drugs on TV, being in bars if you're an alcoholic. And people in early sobriety tend to have more problems with triggering events than people that have more time in sobriety. But it's still tough for everyone. Once a person's become addicted, it can come and hit people out of nowhere. I mean, I think everyone here has known people who've been sober for 10 plus years, and they've actually relapsed. They've gone to a bar, and for whatever reason, there was a drink there, and they took a drink. So it's something that, people have to be aware of. They have to understand relapse, and they have to understand what a trigger is, and they need to be readily aware of it, and they need to be involved with other alcoholics so that they get the feedback and experience. Tony, can you speak to this at all? Is this something that you can relate to?
Well, yeah, I mean, I don't think, I think addiction or sobriety is a practice. It's not a guarantee, and it's something that you have to work at, constantly. I wish that I could have done the 12 steps, the 12-step program I'm in, and at the end of it go, okay, I feel fine, and go about the the process of having, like, you drink every once in a while and knowing that that's all I need is just the one and know when to say when, and it just doesn't exist. It doesn't
work
happen
that way.
Doesn't work that way for me. I remember I was amused one time when they were doing a story about the Moderations Anonymous.
Moderation management.
Is that what it's called?
Yeah.
Moderation man. And the woman they were interviewing this woman, and the woman was talking about how she goes, well, I know that if I have a drink on Tuesday night, my glass of wine on Tuesday night, then Friday, I can have one glass, but I can't have one on Saturday if I have it on Tuesday.
Right.
But then I mark my bottles. And I'm like thinking to myself, how do you keep track of
She's
all
also
this?
in jail right now.
Well, the one who runs it
for
hit and run.
hit and
Right.
run,
Hit and run,
killing
really.
like 4 people.
And then I know there was another time
Don't quote
when
me on that.
I mean, I know that Penn and Teller did a show one time. They have that show called whatever the hell it is. And
Bull, whatever.
yeah, Bull.
One doesn't talk, one does.
Yeah, and
Teller
and they
story.
think
Bull
that
Don.
they think that Alcoholics Anonymous is a cult and crazy and and it's just a matter of, hey, just buck up and you'll be fine. That's okay. I mean, everybody's entitled to their opinion. It doesn't make them right. The immense experience of AA,
Or 12-step groups.
or 12-step groups proves, their theory, I think, incorrect. But again, they're entitled to it, and it's like, if they can be on the air doing it and making a lot of money, all power to them. I don't begrudge anybody their success at all, and especially in this business.
Well, I hope that helps you, Veronica, and I wish you luck, and I hope you turn in next week and keep listening to us. I'd like
Definitely.
to
And also, Veronica, if you have any questions, you could always call.
You can always call 888-601-6040, and we can help you with any questions or problems you might have with addiction.
All right. Thanks a lot, you guys.
Thank you. So I'd like to introduce, we've brought additional guests into the studio. We have our sidekick, Amy. Say hello, Amy.
Hey there.
Amy is a comic, and Amy has brought 2 other comics with her, Danielle Stewart, and Rich Aronovich.
Yeah.
Did I get that right, Rich?
The pronunciation.
Right?
You're doing something right.
I'm doing something right. All 3 are sober comics, and I just think that this is such an interesting group, sober comics.
It's an impossible group.
I have to say, knowing several comics
And being.
and being married to a comic, that
Where's the comic you're married to?
in this room.
Sidekick.
Anyway, the sidekick. It's a difficult group.
Very.
What's your favorite saying, Amy?
I love my
Comedy
husband.
is.
Oh, tragedy plus time equals comedy.
Yes.
Yeah.
So did
Did you write that?
No.
Well, Sam
She wishes she
Kinison.
did.
Sam Kinison actually is attributed with one of the great lines, but it wasn't him. It was a guy by the name of one of the great voices out there, is Maurice LaMarche, who said, "You can make them laugh, but you can't make them happy." And I think that's one of the greatest lines about comedy.
Mm-hmm.
That's just me.
That angered me.
By the way, you look great tonight.
I look great every night. What is that supposed to mean? I'm happy.
It's the yellow shirt.
Do you like the yellow shirt?
Yeah.
Contrasting with the hair.
It's
Yeah,
a Packers shirt.
Oh, did they win?
Yes. They won the Super Bowl.
Well,
tonight.
I'm actually a Saints fan.
You
but-
actually have a Steelers shirt
I am a
underneath.
Saints fan as well.
Are you really?
I
I'm
am.
from New Orleans.
I lived 10 years in New Orleans.
Did you really?
Yeah.
We'll talk about this during the show. Really? Okay. I lived
Yeah.
there for 20 years.
I actually
I'm better than you.
owned a building on Bourbon Street, which led to quite a bit of drinking.
I could imagine.
Yes.
What was it? A sex shop?
No, it was actually a radio station, believe it or not. So,
Which one?
It was called Fast Band. We were an internet radio station. We were one of the first. In 1996, I believe, was our first year.
You have a great voice for radio, by the way.
Thank
Andrew.
Oh.
No, Andrew.
I know.
So how did you guys get into
Bed together?
recovery? To get into bed together?
I said I could help you with your career. What?
Yes.
Into comedy. You want to go first?
Sure.
Go ahead.
I actually, I was drunk and wanted to do stand-up, but I couldn't because I was really busy drinking.
Right.
So I got sober, and like a couple months after I got sober, I got on stage. So I've
That
never
quick?
pretty quickly, yeah. I had done it a few times years and years and years ago, but I was just such a mess.
Right.
You know, I couldn't really do anything. I could barely show up for work. Actually, I don't think I was showing up for work at that period of time, but I got on stage pretty quickly after, so I've actually never done stand-up. I didn't get sober within stand-up. I've only done stand-up sober.
Do you find that you speak about things related to addiction when you're doing comedy?
I do. I used to talk about it a lot more in the beginning,
right.
But it's hard for me. I found it hard to make it relatable. The general public turns against you when you say you don't drink, so you have to very quickly self-deprecate or give them a reason that they can wrap their mind around why. Otherwise, you've alienated yourself from the audience. So it's not impossible, but it's difficult.
I know a lot of comics like try to have a message in their comedy. You know, like talking about the underlying pain that like sometimes breeds comedy.
Well, Richard Pryor, Lenny Bruce.
Right.
The good comics. I'm definitely not in that group.
Oh, no. But I do notice both you and Amy do have bangs. There's something
is that,
to
we're,
that.
Because we're trending. That's what's,
is that what's in style
happening
now?
right now, Judah.
I think Rich has bangs.
Rich also has bangs.
I have bangs for my bangs.
It's a fro bang.
Yeah. You know, you were talking about it. I got into comedy when I was drunk during at this place in New Orleans called Movie Pictures.
Oh my goodness!
You know that place,
yes,
right?
I do.
Okay,
What's it called?
so
Movie Pictures?
Movie Pictures.
Movie
Yeah.
And the first guy that
you
got
drink
me on,
and watch a film.
You drink and I was
Wow.
watching
on couches.
What was that? That
Uptown.
Nazi's
Uptown,
name?
New Orleans.
Mel Gibson. He was yelling about freedom or kill the Jews or something. And
Right.
I went outside to smoke a cigarette. And actually, Ken Jeong was the first guy that got me to do comedy.
That's
And who
Ken.
is that? Just
He's
so.
He's who's in The Hangover is the guy with no penis.
He's
in
the-
Hangover.
he's the
Right. He's
Asian
actually
guy.
really a doctor, right?
He was
Actually-
doing his residency
Right.
in New Orleans. Really nice guy, and very, very successful now. And he's not actually Korean; it's just an act. Stop. Really? So I always say pain equals comedy. So that was the first time. That was in '96. But I don't know if I agree with Danielle, my colleague here. I don't know if people. If it's about yourself and your own experience, I don't think people can. They usually go, I stopped doing drugs, and they're usually supportive of it, because most people know people that have been to the depths and come out of it, and then they go, well, you never drank with Frank, and then they relate in that way. They go, oh,
Yeah, I was saying that personally, I had a hard time making it relatable for me, and the rest of I just couldn't do that. So I do have some stuff I do say that I don't drink because it is a little bit of my act.
You have a bit about like the allergy and being slutty or something like that, right?
Yes, yes. It sets up who I, my opening line sets up who I am, and it does say that I don't drink. But it used to be the majority of my act, but I would just lose people, I think.
I think that was in you. I've seen you. You kill. Listen
that's
to her.
very nice.
We have a really interesting call on line one. Let's take this call on line one. This is Eric. Eric, are you with us?
Yeah, hi, I'm here.
Hi, Eric. Welcome to KLEAN Radio.
Hi, how are you guys doing?
Good.
That's
Good.
clean with a K, by the way.
That's correct.
Absolutely, and I know that firsthand because I was there recently.
Oh, well, that's good
And
to know.
I just wanted to say what a fantastic program it is, and how well I've done since going through it.
That's great. Can you tell us a
And
little bit?
go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, so tell us a little bit about your experience. What happened?
I have been battling cocaine addiction for the last year or so. It was, I've been struggling with a lot of the issues you've been talking about, but I really, once I kind of crossed that line and really into addiction, I was luckily able to recognize it pretty quickly and got myself in treatment, pretty fast. But I've had a series of, relapses, as you've been talking about, and going into different treatment centers, and, had such a different experience with KLEAN. Because it was really the first center where they were really selective about the people that were in the center with me. A lot of centers will just, they'll take anyone in, for whatever reasons, whether it's the money, the economy, whatever. I mean, they all legitimately, I think, want to help the addicts. But a lot of times there's a lot of people who just, they haven't surrendered yet. They don't really think they're addicts. They don't want to be there. And, it doesn't create the most conducive environment all the time. But at KLEAN, they were, everyone there really had surrendered and was about getting sober, and it was such a productive time when I was there.
That's good to hear. Yeah,
I have one question that I'm very curious about, Eric.
Sure.
Right? Is clean clean?
Is clean?
It's extremely clean. Extremely. I'm telling you, I've been to some. I've only been to a few places, but I'm telling you, some of these places are just dumps. Just dumps. I mean, they're not cheap, but no, Clean was beautiful facility.
One of the things with Clean,
topic.
one of the things with Clean is we really like to help everybody. We actually we're located in West Hollywood. We just opened. We actually have 3 free beds that we have donated to the public at all times. A lot of hands just went up. And that's one of the things we like to give back a lot. So I really appreciate your call, Eric, and thank you so much, and glad to hear you're doing well.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Andrew, I've got a question for you. This is something I've always wondered.
How did he get Amy?
No, that question will never be answered. It's the 8th wonder of the world. And then the 9th wonder is how he stands her. But my question is, I watch, celebrity rehab, and I have a lot of friends who have been through rehab treatment and stuff like that. And it doesn't seem to... The programs never seem to stress aftercare as much as it really kind of blows my mind, because for me, what I found, I'm coming up on, I just celebrated 7 years of sobriety.
Great.
And what I've really found in terms of like the long haul is like, the daily reprieve, and how it's not, like on Celebrity Rehab, and again, I know I'm talking about a reality show.
I'm just holding the bottle of water.
No, I know. I'm talking, but they don't ever talk about. I know you can't talk about the program, but they really don't stress the aftercare at all. Like, I work my program every single day. I can't not do that. And and I don't know that people, when they go through rehab, it seems like they come out and they go into the rooms and they don't really know that, like, it's a daily thing.
But here's the thing, too, because...
I think, for me, I think the great secret of recovery that most people don't understand, especially when they're still using, is that it gives you your life back. You go from being isolated in a room and using to all of a sudden being able to do things that you couldn't do. Like you said, you couldn't really do comedy until you
definitely couldn't. Yeah.
By the way, if anybody has any calls, the number is
877-830-830.
You have it written in front of you, okay? So you're at a major advantage.
I just want to comment on what you were saying about it. You give your life back, but this is the only type of addicts are the only people that can totally forget what it was like.
Right.
And the longer that you're clean with a K, sometimes the harder it is to remember, like, oh yeah, I woke up in the back of an ambulance, or oh yeah, I was behind a dumpster with a wig on, or whatever your story is.
Right.
It's hard to remember going, oh well, I've got it licked now, and then without that, there's like a built-in Alzheimer's with addicts. And that's what Danielle's saying, which is, I find to be, in my experience, 100% true. If it's not taken care of as it's written in some literature, I don't know what the restrictions are with mentioning stuff. But anyway,
12 step
okay, a book that happens to be blue.
Yeah.
It's
some are white.
Some are. Why do you have to correct me, really?
Really?
So
is it hard, by the way, being like
a neurotic Jew? Yes.
Also,
yeah.
but I'm gonna
finish the point. But go ahead.
But as is it harder being like a handsome comic?
I don't know. I have to find some handsome comics. It's hard to be a model. I was supposed to be a model, but I'm too tall. It's good that
you know what? On that, we're gonna take a quick break.
Yeah, this is really weird.
And we'll let Rich organize his hair and his thoughts.
I'm really not that handsome.
We'll be back in a second on Clean Radio.
I'm very good looking. My mother.
Dean facility.
Here's Andrew and Judah.
Stop being neurotic.
Here we are. Back to Clean Radio. Hope everyone's enjoying our first inaugural show. You can reach us at 877-830-830. Give us a call. We have a lot of really interesting guests tonight. We have Danielle Stewart, Rich Aronovich, both sober comics, Amy Dresner, another sober comic, and Tony Dennison is still with us from The Closer on TNT.
I just wanted to address what Danielle said, and I do talk about getting loaded and being sober on stage. And I do know what you're talking about because people are drinking. It's a nightclub, so they don't want a buzzkill where you're like, yeah, and I went to rehab, and they're like, boo, you know. But I also have found that they are very supportive when I say, hey, I just celebrated 3 years sobriety and whatever. But I do make a joke about it. I mean, for me, it's really important. I want to break the stigma, and I want people to understand what addiction's like from the inside. So I have this whole new bit where I talk about, where I'm trying to explain it to them, and but I do know exactly what you're talking about. For me, it's huge. The message is really important. I mean, I want to make people laugh, but you know, battling depression and battling, you know, drug addiction is totally part of my story, and I don't want to just be like, hey, don't you love Facebook? You know what I mean? I'm not interested in that. I want to say something. I want people to walk out and be thinking differently.
Well, it's interesting that you say that because I've been trying to figure out a way to incorporate that more into my stand-up yet again, because the fact is, it's the only thing that I do every day except for eat. Like every day I do something having to do with my program. Right. And my life is divided between I only see comics or I only see my recovery people.
Is that on a...
So, what?
Is that on a personal level too?
That's only on a personal level. Like my whole life, you know, you can only have... I have two what I'm trying to say is that like my life is either comedy or recovery.
Absolutely.
There's nothing else in my life. So it's difficult I can't talk about the world of stand-up comedy in my set because that's uninteresting to anybody.
Absolutely.
So really it's become challenging for me not to bring up, you know, my recovery. So I am trying to figure out a way to do sort of what you're talking about doing.
Are there certain clubs that are more conducive? You know, are there certain clubs that are darker? Or are there certain clubs that, you know, you enjoy performing more at? They're not as intoxicating, you know.
I enjoy, a lot of comics enjoy performing at clubs. I prefer bars.
You do?
I do, because my comedy is very raunchy.
Well, we did that gig together at that bar.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, that wasn't the best gig
we
in the
did
world.
a gig together. We went and drove, you know, 2 hours to the middle of nowhere.
Yeah, we're like in Victorville or something.
To do a gig in front of just a bunch of like...
It was like drunk bar people,
drunk like rednecks and stuff.
But I prefer loud, rowdy bars because my act is very rated R. So a club, you know, sometimes like if it's the right setting, a club is great. It's the ideal place for comedy. But for me, I know that if I'm in a rowdy bar, I'm gonna be fine.
Sort of like that place from that Patrick Swayze, Roadhouse.
Roadhouse.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly. Throw a comedian in there.
Can I don't mean to be the negative Nancy, but I disagree. So, like, I find it so opposite for me. Bars to me are the worst place to do for comedy. I find theaters are the best because there's no alcohol, there's no waitress, there's no check spot, there's none of that distraction. Yeah. And then clubs, it depends on it. But you never get a sober heckler.
Is this a gender thing though? I'm being honest.
No. Most comics like clubs. I personally love bars. Most comics don't.
I don't like theaters because I think it's the lighting is bizarre and it's for theater and the seating is different and and it's just too sterile, and I find bars too loud and rowdy and you're really vying for people's attention.
It's
and
really
me,
interesting, though.
It's interesting
that our earlier caller was talking about triggering events and this fear. If you have a spouse or something, or if you're an addict yourself, what can you feel comfortable doing? And here you guys are talking about what you do for work, and alcohol is very involved in comedy. Rich is pointing out that in theaters there isn't alcohol and then finds that easier. Do you think some of working around alcohol is pleasant, unpleasant? Does it enter into how you think?
I love it.
And how strange is that to be attracted to alcohol sort of in a way?
Let's go through.
Yeah.
Let's do this.
I think it's a night. I really dislike it. I don't like drunk people. I don't like after the show they're going, "Can I buy you a drink?" And I go, "Hey, how about you give me $5 and we'll call it a night." It's always hey, you want to smoke pot? It's always trigger. So I don't mind people drinking. It's not my thing. I choose not to be around it, but it's my work, so I have to deal with it.
It's a job.
And when I first got sober, I had to bring somebody with me, or I had situations where I had people who replaced my water, with alcohol because they thought it would be funny. And it was a nightmare,
Wow.
a nightmare.
But
so,
Rich, you have much less time than Danielle too. That must be part of it.
I don't think that's part of it, actually.
Really?
I went into bars immediately.
Huh.
One of my biggest what do you call it? All addicts have pushback. We have, what do you call it? Resistance, defiance.
Right.
My big defiance was, I do not want my life to change. I just want it to stop being unmanageable.
Was it also a rush that you could do it?
Well, at first it was hard, but yeah, maybe now it's a bit of a power thing where I feel like I don't need to go there, but I'm very attracted to the nightlife. I'm very attracted to bars. Yeah, bars. I never date sober guys usually. My boyfriend now is sober, but that's very rare.
Makes three of us in here out of the equation.
Yeah.
You know what? We got another call. You want to take another call?
Let's take a call.
Take a call?
Let's
We got a
take a
call
call.
on line 1. Hello, you're on the air with KLEAN Radio.
with the cat.
Hi, this is Zena.
Hi, Zena. How are you tonight?
I'm really good. I wanted to touch on the subject about, I heard you guys talking about aftercare programs.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't really have a concrete aftercare program my first time around, well, actually, like my third or fourth time around getting sober. I didn't have an aftercare program, and I ended up being a dry drunk and breaking what wasn't really sobriety, but just sobriety after 2 years, because I was miserable. And recently I decided I kind of rolled into sobriety again, and I really the admissions director at KLEAN, who's a good friend of mine, who I met through this sober celebrity tattoo artist, who he just, he threw me into that program, and I was supposed to go to rehab, and I didn't end up going to rehab. And I just wanted to say how thankful I am for AA, because being able to go there and have a place where there's people like you who understand what you're going through, it's a really big gift. And I feel like I've found my group of people. And I mean, I haven't been going to bars, and yeah, it's tempting, and I get asked out, let's go get a beer, and it's I didn't even like beer when I wasn't sober.
It's like I was saying earlier in the show, I don't know when you joined us, but in the beginning I was saying that I thought that one of the main things that leads to alcoholism and drug addiction is loneliness. And one of the great things about fellowships and aftercare programs is having another group of friends that happen to be sober.
Yeah,
and
definitely.
crazy.
And crazy, right. The one thing about
and
people...
in LA, there's plenty of those.
The one thing that I always say, if you want to be with entertaining, interesting people, hang out with people that are sober, because they're the craziest, most diverse group of people you'll ever meet.
It's like I always say, dating in LA is like fishing in Chernobyl.
Yeah,
If you ever want to...
Wait, I think in Russia, hold on, in Russia they say fishing in Chernobyl is like dating in LA.
Yeah.
They say that. That's what
You
they say.
guys.
it is a...
Yeah, definitely. And the aftercare program, and not going to rehab, but it's possible to get sober. It really is possible to get sober without rehab and to do it on your own if you really want it. And
without a doubt, rehab really, all rehab is like AAA. If your car breaks down on the highway, you don't kick it to the gas station. You call a tow truck.
Right.
And rehab is, for the best part, it's like 30 days, you get a jump start. Some programs, 90 days or whatever it is you need.
I like to think, though, that there's a difference between aftercare and fellowships and programs and then treatment centers. Treatment centers, to me...
Too much of a difference.
Yeah, well,
That's
I think
the
that I think
problem.
the treatment centers that are really doing it right understand that that's for crisis intervention.
The problem is how
Right.
many are, that's where the fear is, because how many are doing it right?
Well, I think most people have good intentions, but there's a lot of room for improvement. Like in anything, there's more of a medical model that is developing in the treatment for addiction, and we're seeing more psychiatric illnesses that are occurring alongside addiction.
Woo!
Oh, sorry.
That's Andrew's wife.
Yeah, with a psychiatric condition. We see a lot of people that have drug-induced dementia, drug-induced psychosis. We're seeing seizure disorders more and more. So, people that do have a problem with drugs and alcohol, and especially things like benzodiazepines, like Valium and Xanax, and they're taking massive quantities, can have seizures if they detox themselves. So it's very important that they get professional treatment.
well,
Certainly see their doctor.
The other thing is that the alcoholism really manifests itself before you even pick up the first drink. I mean, I can say that, like, with assurance that, like, you know, I did things that, like, normal little kids don't do. Like, I would, like, get a rush from shoplifting, or, you know, I would steal my dad's joints and didn't know how to smoke them, you know, and just weird stuff like that, like, you know, and also, like, I'm trying to think of, yeah, like, you know, shopping, which is another thing, which is, like, everything. It's just, like, it's the alcoholism, and it was manifesting itself before I ever picked up a drink or a drug. And to be able to recognize that, because my whole life I was like, what's wrong with me? I'm sick, like, I'm mentally ill, I'm crazy. And it's like, oh, hey, I'm an alcoholic. And
Well, thank you, Zena. Thank you so much for your call. You know, I really appreciate it and hope things go well for you. I know Rich has a few comments on marijuana. Was that your drug of choice?
Yeah,
or?
my drug of choice. I tried marijuana every day for about 16 years. I experimented.
That's a long experiment.
I quit
it's
about
a longitudinal study.
I quit about almost 3 years ago. Everything, and I actually quit and moved to LA, which is kind of crazy. Because drugs are legal here. I mean, technically they're not legal, but they're legal. All you got to do is get a medical marijuana card, which is really not hard to get. You know, you go to your doctor, like, hey, doctor, I need a card. He's like, why do you need a card? You're like, I have anxiety. He's like, why do you have anxiety? You're like, because I can't get weed. Boom, he'll give you a card. El problema solved. You know what I'm saying? So it's really, yeah. It's I love that you said that rehab is like AAA. Which to me I thought was just Canadian AA. But that's a good way to look at it, because then you got to maintenance the car after.
Yeah, and there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with needing AAA. You know, it's like, I mean,
this is, by the way, not an ad for AAA
this
at all.
Is not
this
an
has
ad
nothing to do with AAA
or any other ad.
I like the idea is for me to stay in this, and what Danielle was hitting on, and just to reiterate, like,
I was hitting on you.
Stop it! I thought you didn't date sober boyfriends. The thing is that if someone's gonna the whole for me, the steps is what keeps it, and the 12 step is helping another person who's suffering. That will keep you in that cycle. So if you're doing these things, going to meetings, helping other people, and actually doing daily maintenance of your spiritual condition, you're probably going to have a really, really good chance of staying happy and clean. And
what about this idea that, like, I hear this all the time, that, you know, marijuana is just organic and it's not a drug?
Yeah, I can comment on that.
I'm waiting for someone to confirm that, because I'm jumping on that wagon as soon as.
Well, that's fine, but I don't think normal. Maybe some people can deal with it, but I mean, it literally was the all-consuming moment. Like, from the minute I woke up, I smoked before I brushed my teeth. If I didn't have it, I would have to run to the liquor store at 10 in the morning just to drink. Like, it was as addicting as anything else. I thought about it all the time. I made plans. I based my friends on it. I based my situation.
And it's only people that smoke it that say that.
That it's not addictive.
That it's not addictive.
Or not really a drug.
Right. They're going, it's not addictive. I only
totally
smoke every second, bro. You see, I could quit any time.
Isn't it? I thought it was that it wasn't physically addictive, but it's emotionally.
I knew this guy that used to say about, because somebody had asked him, he was a drug specialist, and somebody said to him, what's considered like what? And he said, what's the street value? If there's a street value for it, then it's an addictive drug.
That's an interesting.
Let me put it this way.
I've got something with street value right here.
Your purse doesn't count, sweetheart. I salivate. If I smell marijuana, I actually physically salivate like Pavlov with the bell.
What about
if that doesn't tell you?
That's how I feel about when I hear techno music, because it makes me think of ecstasy. I literally get sexually turned on.
Oh, well, that wasn't what I was talking about.
Cue the music.
Does anybody have yeah.
I mean, but it's not like no. But I don't.
has multiple talents here.
Yeah. Anyway,
she knows.
And what I was trying to, I have a Pavlovian thing too. With when I hear the songs that I used to listen to, it makes me think of the E, and then I feel like I'm on it, and then I want it immediately. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I just have to see underwear on the floor, and I'm thinking I'm high. You know what I mean? I can't even look at PlayStation. You know?
PlayStation, the biggest trigger in America.
It really is. I couldn't play PlayStation for the first 8 months.
It actually saved my life.
Really?
PlayStation saved my life. My father, when I had about 90 days, bought me a PlayStation. because he figured it better be playing PlayStation than any, you know.
Absolutely.
And I literally had nothing going on in my life that when I would go to meetings when I was newly sober, I would talk about winning Madden 99. I was so happy that I won the Super Bowl.
I'm going to go on a limb here and say you got sober in 99.
Yeah, 98, because it was always the year after.
Right. Well, I hate to keep bringing this up, but I really do. I just want to have a final thought, at least, on the aftercare thing, because I took a girlfriend to a rehab at a hospital in Boston, a very reputable hospital, and I went through the whole program with her. It was like a friends and family program where the friends could go to, and they didn't mention aftercare at all. I mean, they might have made an aside of like, you know, a successful person goes to, you know, a support group, but I mean, you know, I don't know. It just, I feel like that's the only way to stay.
Well, maybe they well,
sober.
the question again is, and I'm sure Andrew can answer this, is that do people want you to get better? Some people, you know, continually do make money by you staying sick.
That's what disturbs me.
That's
well,
really
you know,
sad.
it's
and I think that's truer than not true. Yeah.
Well, on that note, we're going to take a break again in a second, but I'd encourage people to call in on KLEAN Radio. Our number is 877-830-830. We got a bunch of funny comics in here, and God knows what they'll say about you. So give us a call, 877-830-830. Welcome back to KLEAN Radio. Wow.
We are in the studio with Rich
Aronovich.
Thank you very much. Beautiful girl with
Danielle Stewart.
Danielle Stewart.
And Amy Dresner.
Amy Dresner.
Yo.
Spanswick.
That's right.
When are you taking Andrew's last name, by the way?
I actually am legally Spanswick, but I use Dresner for my
stage.
Yeah.
We also still have Tony Dennison in the studio.
And the trivia question tonight to win a date with Tony Dennison, I finally came up with it, is...
I hope I get this. No.
Guests cannot win. Guests
come
cannot
on!
win.
That's not fair.
I don't know. Tony's looking excited there. I don't know.
Look at him.
No?
All right, I really don't have a question. Please, somebody come.
Okay, who invented the thermometer in 1654?
Oh, he loves this.
Okay, great.
Question.
That is the question to win.
Question?
That is the
thermometer in
question
1664.
to win a date with Tony Dennison.
Yeah, but this is too easy because everyone has got Google and all that.
Okay.
It's really hard to come up with a question to stump people because of.
You might want to speak into the microphone.
I said it's really hard to come up with a question to stump people because
of Google.
Right?
Yeah. How about this question? Why do they still make unlubricated condoms? If anybody could answer that, then you can win a date with Tony.
I can answer that.
I can probably come up with a joke about that.
And the number here to call is 877-830-830. 877-8.
8:30.
Okay, right.
Is that complicated enough?
Okay, so I have a question for you guys, and I was actually I've always been curious about this because you were talking before about the rush, and you know, I remember as a kid growing up, not as a kid, even as an adult, we'd see Behind the Music, and which was one of my favorite shows, and I think every alcoholic's favorite show. But they never showed the after. You know, they never showed like, you know, after. And I'm always curious, like, how is it when you get off the stage? You know, I was like when Dwight Gooden was sober at the time. Like, how was it pitching that no-hitter? What do you do that night?
Well, I've done it wasted and I've done it clean. And I actually went on. This is a great way to put it. I went on stage with like 102 fever. And there's no calling in sick. I mean, it's either the show's canceled. So I went from bed to stage in Reno, and the adrenaline pumped so hard that it was like I wasn't sick for that hour. And as soon as I got off stage, it was back to like, I mean, it's absolutely the most amazing high.
But my question is
I'm
after.
Up, after you're up, you're like pumping adrenaline, and if it was a good show, it's the best high, and you're thinking like, wow, that's awesome, and your head's bobbing yes. And if it was a bad show, you're right about it. I know.
Did it take you a while to
what?
To be okay with it? To be okay with after the rush? You know.
I love the rush. That's all I got left. What are you talking about?
No, after is what I'm asking. I'm saying, you know, you get off the stage.
Yeah.
15,000 people are clapping for you. What do you do?
You suck it in. I mean, you want to...
Well, I actually don't handle it that well. I don't think, actually, it's the best high in the world. Ecstasy and cocaine together are a way better high. I'm going to be honest. But
chewing that invisible sandwich and touching your nipple going, do you have a lollipop? I don't think so.
For me, it is. I would much rather take designer drugs. But I do have a really big problem with the after rush of a show, and I have to deal with it. I mean, it feels good, but I have to. Usually, my first instinct is I want to get laid. That's my first instinct. Could I say laid on the radio?
Yes, you
just did.
Okay.
Do you have a time machine, sir?
But that's my sober preferred form of self-destruction. So I want to self-destruct. So I want to get laid. I want to eat Ben and Jerry's.
Right.
And it's hilarious because it's like I could not feel any better about myself, and therefore I guess I want to knock that down or get to a more comfortable place of self-destruction. I don't know. But sex and ice cream are the first two things that I have to confront and deal with. And I'm in a relationship right now, so I'm like, okay, one's off the table. And so then either I eat ice cream or I don't eat ice cream.
Can we switch the date between you and Tony?
Tony's already made up his mind. The trivia question was, who did Tony want to go out with? That was
yeah. I usually can't sleep, but what ends up happening is if we get off stage at like midnight, I'm not in bed till 4 a.m. I can't sleep.
Yeah, well, let me jump in here. We got another call from Rhonda. Let's hear it from Rhonda.
Help me, Rhonda.
Hi, how are you?
Good, Rhonda. How are you doing tonight? Welcome to KLEAN Radio.
Thank you. Am I talking to Rich, Danielle, Amy, Judah, or Tony?
You are talking to all of us.
Oh, my God.
And quite well.
Wow.
All at once.
But that's Andrew who's leading.
But this is Andrew.
Oh, hi, Andrew.
Yes.
And Judas.
Well, I do have an answer to your thermometer question before we start.
Oh.
Okay.
Rich might be stumped here.
And this is winning a date with Tony
You know what's the
Dennison.
best is that no matter what happens, I'm okay. What's the answer?
Well, actually, I'm going to answer a question with a question first.
That's not in the rules, but go ahead.
Well, that's okay. I like to make up my own rules.
Yeah.
We have a fellowship.
Tony's changing his mind.
I know a place for you with a coffee pot. Go ahead.
Are there one or two inventors of the thermometer?
Uh-oh.
And what countries do they come from?
Okay, I can answer that. Would you like me to answer that?
Please.
Okay. I read it in a book, so this is before the time of your Google search, but from Italy.
Who says I did a Google search? I use Yahoo.
Yeah. Sorry. Big difference. Big difference. Do you want the answer? Like, am I just supposed to? I don't want to.
No. She's going to give the answer.
Okay. It's from Italy.
She's just telling you that.
Italy is the country.
One of two.
Okay.
And which thermometer would that be?
How did the question mouth. Maybe you should try that.
Well, she's right. There's a tushy thermometer.
It's called a rectal
That's right.
thermometer, Amy.
Okay.
Tushy is not a medical term, by the way.
It's the mercury one.
Okay, that sort of fits the bill. And the basic air thermometer, which predated Fahrenheit's alcohol thermometer.
By the way, I'm really sorry I brought this up. What's the answer?
She's taking a lot of Provigil.
I know. I mean, this is like, I just threw that out here, being like, who's the nerd that's actually going to answer it? She calls right in. I love it.
This is what happens when you don't drink. You have too much time.
Become a thermometer expert.
Sweetie, do me a favor. Go to Rich is Funny on Facebook and friend request me right now.
Okay.
You and I are going to be friends. Go ahead. What are we going to say?
And then unfriend him. He loves that.
Oh, yeah. Only if you're in show business.
It actually turns him on.
I like that.
That's what he's addicted to.
What's my part in it? Go ahead.
So what's the answer?
What's the answer? I know the answer, but what's your answer?
Galileo Galilei, the Italian physicist, invented the basic air thermometer in
Okay, that's one. And the one
1642.
Right. The other
And more commonly known as Daniel Fahrenheit was the German physicist who invented the alcohol thermometer.
Wow. And
You have a
Yeah.
winner. Rhonda has won a date with Tony Dennison.
I don't think either answer was what Richard
Yeah,
wanted.
It doesn't really matter.
I read
We just
the
want
Duke of
Tony.
Tuscany in
Well, I think Tony's hot, so, you know.
Well, there we go.
We have
Tony's blushing.
We have a connection. A love
I don't know.
connection.
Tony, how are you feeling about this?
Well, give me a thermometer so I can see what my temperature
You look pretty flushed, Tony.
Isn't there a Foreigner song about this? Fever of 103.
Fever of
Right?
103,
We'll just check it out and see
I
what they're doing.
like Tony. Tony's got like a Tony got like a New York energy about you. Am I right?
Yeah, you from New York?
from Harlem, yeah.
From Harlem.
But then he moved to Long Island at
You're
a very
very
young
light-skinned
age.
for Harlem.
That's not. No, that's why he's a tough guy.
Family's from Jamaica.
Oh, Jamaica, Queens. I'm assuming, right?
Astoria?
Jamaica, Queens, right?
It's Harlem, then Hollis, Queens, and then
Like Run DMC.
and Hicksville, Long Island.
Okay, all right.
All right, Rhonda, thank you for your call. Stay on the line.
Oh, I
and
didn't
we'll-
answer ask my question.
Go for it, Rhonda.
Okay, you have a
I was
question?
just
Go ahead.
answering yours.
Okay.
No, all right. Sure.
Okay, so my question is, can you be an addict without being a user of alcohol or drugs? Can you have an addictive personality, but can you be the opposite?
Absolutely. In
Oh,
fact,
God,
there's all sorts of qualifications for being an addict, and there's all sorts of types of addiction. In fact, there's a whole set of addictions called process addictions, which have nothing to do with any sort of chemical whatsoever. So gambling can be an addiction. You can be addicted to
Useless trivia.
shopping is a big one. Useless trivia.
Masturbation.
Masturbation. I was going to say that too. Masturbation.
Masturbation is a big one.
That was the
You
first.
can be addicted to working out.
Addicted to working out.
Sadly, I haven't gotten that one.
Yeah.
I want to be a gym junkie so bad.
I just can't do it. I like flabs.
Yeah.
I really do.
Okay, the question is, when can any of those addictions turn dangerous?
I think the real issue with addiction is, for most people, is not the use or process of doing something. It's when it becomes something in your life that stops you from functioning.
When your life becomes unmanageable because of it.
It's like if you only drink 7 times and each time you drink, you crash your car.
Right.
You might want to look at it.
You might have a few issues if you have one of those. Now
we're doing this is the alcoholic
if you have the
redneck
breathalyzer,
comedy.
the 40-year-old virgin thing in your car.
You might be an alcoholic.
Might be an alcoholic. It's just a thought.
Yeah, like
every time you drink and you end up
that one time.
I mean, watch Strange Addiction. People are addicted to eating couch cushion and stuff like that, and chalk and all that kind of stuff. Have you watched?
The big thing I think is
I'm
that
serious.
it's about.
Don't look at me like that.
It's about whether or not people are happy and functioning. Most people that really have gotten into a later stage of addiction are very unhappy. They're either suffering physically or emotionally or spiritually.
How many times can you masturbate in a day that's not considered dangerous?
Anything under 9.
Under 9.
Wow, the fact she knows that is so disturbing. Is that for men or women?
That's just my personal.
For women,
And the fact that Amy now has another problem.
Yeah, woo!
Now,
I'm good then. I'm good.
Now, in masturbation and socks, is there a correlation?
Rhonda, was your question answered?
Almost answered.
Almost
now,
answered.
could you become a process, as we call it, I think it's a process addict, having had traditional addicts in your family?
Absolutely.
Or you're more likely to.
Yeah, certainly. People that have people with addiction in their family are more prone to have addictive personalities themselves. And so you could develop a process addiction, and you're generally it's considered 1/3 more likely to develop a process addiction or a regular addiction if you have a prior addiction in your family genetically.
They also used to think that it was there was genetic. When I grew up, they said it's a genetic correlation that alcoholism could be inherited, and that thus if you're it
What a
automatically
bad inheritance.
Yeah, well
Danielle has.
I have a question. Is sex a process addiction or?
Absolutely. Sex and love addiction.
Depends how you do it, I guess.
But what about the dopamine aspect of it?
Most addiction is related to the dopamine receptors,
Okay.
but there are other neurotransmitters besides dopamine within the brain.
Rhonda, we do have to go.
Nobody's really fully sure all the different factors that lead to addiction.
And here's the question that I always say to people: if you have to ask, you might have a problem.
Yeah, most people, don't end up. Most people don't end up getting into treatment unless things have gotten to the point where they've had several wake-up calls. But generally, if you're finding your life to become unmanageable from either drinking or using drugs or shopping too much or
using the gym,
I'm still in the masturbation addiction.
Well,
could you go to rehab for that? Would you have a roommate?
Of course.
Okay.
we
Sierra Tuscany or whatever.
There's several
Sierra
actually
Tuscany.
great clinicians in Los Angeles that work with sex and love addiction, and including masturbation. Rob Weiss is one of them. He has a really good center.
Really?
Okay, one last question, and I doubt you'll hear it from anybody else.
Well, probably not, since you are the last caller of the night.
Oh, okay. Can you be addicted to addicts? I find myself always being the friend of addicts. I'm always called the normie or the clean one.
Yeah, Al-Anon. They have a whole program.
But I've never
for
been
it.
to Al-Anon.
Well, you should go. Lois is saving a seat for you.
Yeah, you might want to check that out.
I think you answered all my questions. Great show, you guys.
Here's
Thank you, Rhonda.
Here's a good.
And
number.
Rhonda did win the date with Tony Dennison, so let's
Hang on the line and we'll
hang
hook
on
you
the
up
line.
with that.
Wait, only if you guys are going to chaperon.
I
sure.
I will chaperone Rhonda. around, I promise.
Judah never leaves his sofa, so
Yeah,
Where are we
he's
going?
actually at Tony's house, so I will be there.
I got a quick knock
Okay,
knock
well,
joke.
I look forward. I'll friend Tony. Can I friend you too?
Yes.
Dan Tanas. Can we go to Dan
There you go.
Yes.
Friend Tony and Rhonda,
Yeah.
you will be set up on a date.
Here's a good
Awesome.
joke for
Thanks,
Rhonda.
guys.
Thank you so much.
Bye. Have a
Bye-bye.
good night.
This is a knock knock joke for Rhonda. Alcoholic knock knock joke. Knock knock.
Who's there?
Is it okay that I'm knocking? Here's an Al-Anon knock knock joke. Knock knock.
Who's there?
I'll get it.
Oh, jeez.
And we'd like to thank all our guests, including Rich, for coming in tonight.
Go to Rich is Funny on Facebook and Twitter.
You want to plug?
Yes, please
yes.
plug.
Can you follow me at the Danny Stew, DANISTEW? Also, my website's DanielleStewart.com.
I'm going to be here every week terrorizing, so.
And
how
what's
do
the
you-
name of your tour?
Yeah, Amy's on tour right
yeah,
now.
Without
I'm on a
Liquor.
tour called Laughs Without Liquor with 2 other sober comics, and
We'll see the whole tour in here in a
March.
couple of weeks.
And you
Yeah,
also-
yeah,
and
yeah.
you
I'm gonna bring the
tune
other
back
two
in.
And last but not least, you could also catch the final season of The Closer on TNT.
Gotta love
Nice.
Yes, well, it's not really the final season.
it. Nice try.
Gave it a shot.
It's a process.
Let's not ever have 4 Jews in a room again together. I didn't get away.
First of
Hey,
all-
that part
and
of-
first of all, you're not fully.
Okay, guys. Great first show. Thank you all for being here. Really loved it. Everybody out there, tune in next time. Looking forward to it. We're gonna have some great guests next week, including more comics.
And if you look at Clean Radio on Monday, you will see who are.
CleanRadio.com. You can
That's
check out
clean with a
K. KLEAN Radio.com. Thank you, everybody, for listening.
Thanks.
God bless, Godspeed.